All right, let's all get a chair. I want you all to know I did not use the microphone earlier today because it was not being recorded, but he asked me that I must use he didn't ask me, he told me that I must use the microphone so that it actually comes out. So Danny is pulling out some chairs. Camila, close the back door, please. You can just leave them down and they'll get them as they need it. Just leave them in the back. And can you turn off the light just to over here, please? Thanks. Wow, is there one more you can turn on? No, was there one more you can turn on?
Right.
Just, okay, perfect. Just for right now, I might turn some more off. Okay. All right, see, I'm being on time, Mary Palmer. Where are you? Okay, I'm trying to follow the schedule. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here, and more importantly, taking the time out of all of your busy lives. Can you not do that yet? When we start, we'll do that. Okay. I want to thank you all for being here. We did something really different this year. I did it this morning, and it was actually really good. It was really funny because we thought it would be a really good idea to cater to the senior community because maybe they don't want to come out late. But it turned out to be all young residents coming out for lunch. So it was and it was business professionals in the community like Danny Reyes and a couple of other ones that came out. So it was a really nice group of about 25 residents. So we thought that was a really interesting twist because I thought it was going to be a different crowd. But the one thing I will say to you, it's a little long this evening. It's not like last year. The last couple of years, we try to keep it within 30 minutes because I think I lose you and heads might be nodding. But I think you all will agree when I say that a lot happened in 2018 as our fiscal year started in October. And it's right where we were ending the year, a lot happened. So with that said, again, I want to officially welcome you and I want to thank you all for being here. I want to take a moment to recognize our village manager, Christia Alou. Vice Mayor Nickerson, he was here this morning, thank you, and he's here again. Councilwoman Roman, thank you, she was here this morning, she's here again, thank you. Councilperson Dre, I got right back there. And Councilperson Mathis right up here. Chief Duffenigel, and our village clerk, Eunice Jacoby. I want to say that it might be a first that the entire administration is here. Now, scary when I just said the entire administration. Now, that's only, the clerk and the manager, right? And then there's 5 of us, so we're going to get into that also. I want to thank my husband, he is here. But more importantly, I want to thank all of you for taking the time. If you have to leave, I understand. But again, it's about an hour, 15 minutes, and it's incredibly informative. And I would encourage you to rough it out with us because I think you'll find that it's going to be really informative. So with that said, I want to go ahead and I'm just going to walk you through real quick. And don't feel bad if you have to get up and have an empanada because they're really amazing. And if you don't, then we're going to be then we can't have that. So, okay. So turn this on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the next slide, and it's going to be sort of what I'm going to cover today. Everything that I'm going to say is going to be on the slides. The slides are going to be posted on the website, but I might not go in exactly what it says in there and in the order, especially when it comes to Irma, because there's a lot of slides on Irma. So, okay, so what we're going to cover this evening is sort of what the highlights of 2018. And needless to say, as you all know, I think the #1 highlight, and I wouldn't call it a great highlight, but it was Hurricane Irma. And we're going to cover in great deal the whole process that the administration and the council had to go through and all of the aftermath and where we're at today with that. The other topic we're going to cover is communication and transparency because it seems to be the one that consistently comes up as a concern from residents that either we don't do sufficient or we don't do well enough. So we'll definitely cover that again. The Northeast Corridor Smart Plan Route Transportation, it's important for you all to know what we've been doing throughout the year. Little call to action. I definitely, I'll go over that briefly, what we've been doing. Update on future development, what's transpiring and what you all are going to be seeing. Of course, the budget. You will actually have a screenshot of the top sheet, and we'll go over that in detail. And then one of the last couple of things is, as a result of the budget and what have you, we're going to talk about the events that we've always done, and we're going to talk about some of the way forward of what it's going to look like in 2019. And then there'll be a recap going over a little bit of everything and what else that you all are going to expect for 2019. So with that said, I'm going to get the light over here, the middle light. Okay. First thing that I want all the residents to understand is that when it came to Hurricane Irma, it was not just a shock to the village of El Portal. It did not just catch the village of El Portal off guard. It caught all of the municipalities of Miami-Dade off guard. It was not something that whether we had or whether they had a plan in place or they had a contract in place. Hurricane Irma came in and impacted so many at the same time. When it came to the village of El Portal, it was a time where we had an interim manager and we had an acting chief. And it was a first for me as a mayor to go through a hurricane. And I want every single one of you to know that there is nothing that I would have done differently. There is nothing that I think the administration would have done differently at that time. Because when we were able to get out for the first time, the first thing we thought of was safety. You know, what do we have to do to secure the safety of the residents? And how does that look and how is that going to happen? When we came together, it was not like you have a lot of time to have the conversation because residents are calling you. There were so many residents that had a tree on their car, or they had a wire line that they could not get out of their house, or they had a tree that they could not get out of their house, or if they could get out of the house, there was trees blocking roadways. There was all of that going on, and each and every single one of us was impacted by Hurricane Irma in one way or the other. So what we did was we came together and we were like, okay, the first thing that we want to do is we got to take care of an emergency. And we had that much planned out. So what we were able to do is we contracted with World Waste immediately and Big Daddies, and they came in and they took care of all of the immediate needs that we had. And at that time, our police officers, when World Waste came in and when Big Daddies was coming in to remove what we would consider all of the emergency, we had police officers serving as monitors. There is really nothing that you can do during that time frame that is not being monitored somehow, somewhere. So we did that for the immediate time frame right after. We had either one officer to ensure that the traffic was flowing, and then we had the other officer to make sure that the truck was actually arriving, and then there was a slip that they would actually have to give to the village manager, and we did that for several days. And then, you know, one of the camaraderies of being a part of certain organizations like the Miami-Dade League of Cities, and you know, I'll get into that a little later, is you build a camaraderie with your peers. So, you know, I was getting ready to go home. I don't have the exact date. It was a few days after Irma, and the manager, the chief, and I were probably literally on 24/7 with the police department, you know, trying to get the emergency roadway out. And in my head, I'm thinking, we have a police department of only 5. We have an acting chief, we have a manager, and we have a clerk. That's it. There's no way that we can possibly sustain the move that we were doing. So I picked up the phone and I called a few mayors and sort of like, you know, everybody wanted to help, but they had their own town to deal with. So as much as they wanted to be able to help, the best they can do is give recommendation and give advice. All of them, and these are departments and these are cities that have layers and layers and layers of staff. They're like, Mayor Cubillos, you gotta bring in a company. There's no way you're going to be able to sustain the amount of work that you're doing with the staff that you don't have. Because the officers were really playing multiple roles and different roles. So with that said, I called the manager immediately. We met the next day. First thing we did was we actually called our former manager, Jason Walker. And this is just a timeline of Irma. And we sat there and we were like, you know, where's the emergency plan? You know, what did you do with Wilma? And he made a recommendation to Gabriella, which is who they use from disaster program operations. And then we also called waste management. Waste management is where most of the municipalities in Miami-Dade County hauled to the location for the debris, and we got the same recommendation. And then, so we brought her in, and fortunately to our code, when the governor has declared a state of emergency, the manager has the right to be able to act upon the contracts that are necessary to ensure the safety of the residents. So with that said, immediately we met with Gabrielle, I think literally within 24 hours. And through relationships again that we have, that I've had with the organizations like the League of Cities and the Florida League of Mayors and the Florida League of Cities, you know, I had to take a look at what city can we partner with. And fortunately, there's this called an MOU exists and a mutual aid exists. And MOUs, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, as well as the mutual aid, they exist so that in a situation like this, you can partner with the city. And that's really what we had to do at that moment. Because when we took a look at the magnitude of what needed to get done, there was no way that this administration with 3 people could do it. And it would be nearly impossible, and they would be doing absolutely nothing else. So with that said, and that's when we move forward and we move with it. And we have no regrets about it. I have no regrets about it, because there is no other way that this administration could have functioned at the magnitude that Irma impacted the village of El Portal. There was so much happening at the same time, going on in the same place, in every municipality. There's 34 in Miami-Dade County. We were not the only ones. So everybody was pulling from the same resources. So even if we had a contract, you know, that was pre-designed or pre-written, there are many municipalities that had pre-contracts done, but they weren't even being honored, because what was happening was that Ash Plush, which is one of the biggest ones, they were all over. They were like, okay, you're gonna pay $2 more for the haul. Okay, you're gonna pay 50 cents. Okay, you're gonna do this. One of the advantages that I felt that we had was that when we did the mutual aid, we were getting a company that came from outside of Florida. And we thought that that would be a benefit, because before Looks Good Service was even considered, and we were considering another one, they didn't even show up. So we're sitting there, we're like, yeah, no, this is not gonna work. So, you know, we went through those processes, and it's important that the residents know that when this happened, we were so incredibly mindful during the whole process. But what's most important, now that it's over, one of the most important things is what we're doing now. And what we're doing now is we are taking a look at what we did. We're taking a look at how we did it. We're clearly looking at the cost of what it cost and having a plan. Because there's nothing more important right now for the administration, aside from everything else we're working on, is to take a look at all the analysis and figuring out with cross comparison, what can we do and how can we leave this village better? And with that said, one of the most important things that we're doing is that it doesn't matter who the mayor is, it doesn't matter who the manager is, and it doesn't matter who the chief is. What's most important is that there is a benchmark set, and there is a binder set, and there's standards set. So now that we've experienced the disaster, now that we've experienced the pain of the cost, and now that we've experienced the process, in hindsight, now we sit there and we look at it like, oh, we could have done that, or maybe we're gonna do that, or maybe we're gonna do this. But all of that has to be put somewhere so that whoever is next here, it could be Christia, could be me, could be Chief Helgno, it could be this entire council is here, we have something to go on. And it's not to say that the former administrations didn't do their job. It's not to say that. What it really is to say is that, you know, the former administrations really, you know, as we do now, they didn't have the staff. But, you know, what basically we're always operating on putting out fire, putting out fire, putting out fire. So some of these standards and procedures and operating and SOPs perhaps, you know, are too outdated and we don't have what's needed. But now what's most important for the council and for the administration is to have a plan. Because, hey, guess what? If we don't have a plan now that we've all experienced and we're all here, you know, shame on us. So when Christina and I talk about Irma, you know, we reminisce about some of the things that we experienced, but more importantly, it's how are we going to do it better? How are we going to leave it better? How can we do it better? How can we do it more cost effective? What exactly did we do that could have been done better? And I'm going to tell you, the process whereby we went through Irma, and I watched the ladies do, I'm going to just go through some highlights. When I watched what some of the ladies did that worked for Disasters Program Operations, which is our management company, it was beyond impressive. I would go to the debris site where you all saw it at the sanctuary, and you would see people with yellow jackets on, and there's usually 4. There was 2 of them that worked for the hauling company, and then there was 2 that worked for disaster program operations, which means they worked for us. So there was 4, because there had to be a checks and balance. And every time they went to cut a limb, or every time they went to cut a tree, you would see the truck that cut trees, and then behind them would be cars, and the cars would have a man or a woman in there with yellow jackets. And what they would do, they had to actually mark down the longitude and the latitude of the location of each tree that was being cut down. And then that had to be cross-referenced and approved. And whenever a tree had to be taken down, which 79 trees were taken down during this time, it was never done without the signature of the manager and myself, and an arborist would look at it. There were a few trees that we had to actually completely remove, and when we did it, it was never done, oh, okay, we're gonna take the tree and it's gonna be removed. The trees were removed mindfully because it had to be, because they were either dead or they were going to die based on the way the branches were broken, or the way the tree was cut in half during the storm, or what have you. Is this your car? Because I know a tree fell in your car, right? Oh no, it did. It fell right afterwards. It fell after. Okay. I thought that was okay. So, oh, it's okay. With that said, it was one of those things where and then not only were they doing it when they would go to the site, but then when it came to the hauling station, it was the same exact thing. There were times that if I had the opportunity, I would go to the debris site and I would just take a look at what they were doing. And there were trucks. There were trucks that would come in. Oh, that's Northwest 87th Street. I took that picture. I was in the car with Officer Sharp. That was like literally an hour after it all stopped. I think I might have gotten that photo from, okay. We'll get into that, but I wanted to show you all this picture, which I thought is, okay, Mike. So here is a debris site. Now, there was another truck, there was another lift that you can get on. So I got on it to see actually what was inside. So after the trees were cut, or the limbs were cut and they were brought here, we were trying to reduce it and compact this so that it would be less. But the trucks would never ever leave without the monitors filling out forms. And it wasn't just 2, it wasn't just 2, there was 3 to 4, 2 per company. So it was 2 on the debris company, and then there was 2 that were ours. And how it worked, because I was doing one with them, is they would get on and they would look at it and they'd be like, okay, that's like 97% full. And then Looks Good Services monitor would get on and said, no, that's like 100% full. Then when they get off, they have to cost compare. And if it doesn't match what you're saying, then they had to do it again. But when they would go to the debris site over a Waste Management really never took anything that was over like 92%. So generally, every receipt that came out of every truck hauling was about 88, 89, 91. And all of those receipts went every single day to the manager at the end of the day, and she had to sign off on it before it even got off to, because that's how we would have to get pay the company, and that's that's how we in the end would get reimbursed as well. So that's what I wanted to definitely cover that, and that was done. The process of all of this ended on November 7th. And one of another important factor to point out is that on September 21st is when we received the permit through FDEP to be able to use the site. The site was donated by the proprietors of the sanctuary. They did not receive any money. We didn't receive any money. They completely donated it to us. So there you have the site, and then I think you have here, we actually they had to leave it exactly the way they found it. And not only did they have to leave it exactly the way that they found it, they could not actually vacate it until we received the letter from the Department of Environmental Protection indicating that it was to the standards of the way they received it. So that's exactly how the last day, which was November 2nd, that they left it. And the other important factor to realize is that is that there were when you take a look at trees that were removed, there are many cases that there was what we called an ROE, which is a right of entry. We didn't do many of them. I want to say we probably did maybe 15 to 20. And some of them were the homes of the seniors, where the tree fell, and it was literally right in the front yard or right in the backyard. We had some residents who, their tree in the backyard would fall in the neighbor's house and it broke the fence. So there was a lot of those scenarios, and we really tried to make it sort of the decision based on the recommendation of the arborist and based on the recommendation of the situation overall. But there were some right of entries that we did do. Again, not overall 79, but 79 were removed because they needed to be. And some of those of 79 mostly were all on the swale. If you ever want to know the exact GPS and the longitude and the latitude, I'm sure that the manager can find the documentation. But the best part about the documentation is that now we have to use all of that data analysis, and that is what the manager, the chief, and actually the attorney who was here earlier, and the clerk were on an email, and I asked them, I said, hey, the dust is somewhat settled. We have paid all of our debt, but now we really need to take a look at what we're going to do. We can't sit there and cry of what we did, because again, I will tell you, as I said it this morning, I know that we did a great job based on the tools that we had, based on the resources that we had, based on our ability at the time. But I do believe that with planning, I do believe with an operation manual, that whoever the team is in place next can and will do it better, clearly more cost effective. But we don't know what the disaster can be or cannot be the next time. But that's the most important, and that's where I really want to go into next as it relates to what we're doing. This is a sheet. Oh, by the way, really important. I didn't make all these sheets up in the last 24 hours. I'm really not that good. But all of this was covered at the town hall that we had in April. In April, I had a disaster and lessons learned from Irma. So all of these slides are from the town hall that I had then. And all of this, if I'm going through it rather quickly or I'm not really going in order, everything that I'm saying are on these slides, and they're going to be on the village website as of tomorrow, okay? This is an important slide because, there was a time where FEMA did a lot of advance payments. And what happened was they would advance pay perhaps too much money. And then they would say, and 5 to 7 years later, oh, okay, no, you know what, we gave you 10 million, but really you owe us 6 million now. And actually, one of the things that the Florida League of Cities just passed last week at the conference is a resolution that we're presenting to not only the state of Florida for all the cities, but to Washington, and that is setting a time frame, meaning that you have 3 years to come back to municipalities saying, hey, you owe us money, so that you're not coming back in 7 to 10 or to 12 years, because so much happens. I mean, a village moves forward, a town moves forward. It's unfair to a town to be able to even think of paying that back. So that is one of the reasons why they don't do advance payments right now, and we're going to get a little into that because I was recently at Governor Scott's office, and that was discussed in great length. But here, what I want you all to take a look at is the time frame. So when it seemed like we were trying to do so much in the beginning as it relates to emergency and impact, yes, of course, it's for the safety because that is our priority. But it was also because within the first 30 days is when you get your most reimbursement back. So in the first 30 days, first 30 days is when you get the 100%. And that's where the first column that you see, it tells you what we spent, and hopefully based on the reimbursement is what we would get back. The second time frame, and by the way, it's the time frame that the bill was incurred, not when the bill was paid. Because clearly this didn't get paid within 30, 60 days because we didn't receive all those invoices until this year. But it's when the actual expense occurred for Irma. So if you take a look at this column, if you take a look at the second column right over here, it's where we spent the gist of the money, which is $1.7 million. And that is, that's the 90% reimbursement. Also, aside from debris and haul, the other thing that is reimbursable is the time of the police officers. You can ask Chief Hognigle at the end of the meeting when she had to submit everything to be able to get reimbursed back from forced pay. I mean, we had to submit manuals and policies for the police department, their timesheets. all of that, I mean, the amount of documentation that's necessary to fill out and submit is extensive. And with that said, this is why I would say over and over that hiring a management company was necessary. The difference that I found that El Portal over other municipalities did was that perhaps we kept on the management company longer than other municipalities because we don't have the staff to maintain it. It would be unrealistic to expect the manager and the clerk and our building clerk to manage what was being managed. Because if that's going to happen, something's going to suffer. Either it's going to be the reimbursement process, it's going to be the front desk, or it's going to be all the other 6 things that we're going to cover later that the manager really is responsible for as we are doing other activities as well. And we have other initiatives and we have other priorities that she manages. So while they're still on payroll and they don't work as many hours because everything is submitted, and that is one of the things that I'm going to cover a little later of how is that FEMA can think it's okay that a city of our size has to pay a FEMA consultant so that FEMA reimburses us. I mean, it's pretty sad. It's exactly what I told the governor last week, or the week before. Really sad, actually. But we'll talk about that when I get to that slide. Anyway, so the last column is the 80%, which was anywhere from 31 to 90 days. So, and everything is reimbursable as it relates to even the disaster program operations, which was our FEMA consultant company. The monies that have been paid to them, a portion will be reimbursed back to the village. The police officers, when they went on Alpha Bravo, that is also reimbursable back to us. Any expenses that the village incurred with regards to we had to buy generators and all that, that also goes into this reimbursable. You will notice that shortly after, or maybe 30 to 60 days, we had a lot of signs that were repaired or that were sort of like dilapidated and that got fixed. All of that is reimbursable. The fence from the tot lot that I know it took a little longer to get fixed, that would be reimbursable. There was some drainage that we had to clean out because when you take a look at the floods, it wasn't necessarily because of the canal or its low-lying area. It was because maybe that area, the storm drainage needed to be cleaned. So we actually, after we had the pictures that were taken, she had to go with a company, I think it's Craig Smith that we use, and they had to go check out the drainage to see if that was an area that had to be cleaned, and if it was, it got cleaned. So there were so many things going on at the same time in the background. And then hey, guess what? And while we were doing that, we realized that there were 6 years of annual reporting that needed to get done for our storm cleaning that we had to do in the process. So there was so much going on at the same time. And if there was ever any doubt that there was a lack of due diligence or there was a lack of thinking, it is all the opposite. I truly commend the police department. I truly commend the manager. I commend myself. And I commend the council because while they may have seemed uninvolved, but they were involved because in something that I said earlier, and that is that there was a lot for them to be able to just have trust because it was a time that in our emergency plan, while it was as brief as it was, one thing it did state is that the mayor assumes the control over a situation when there's a disaster. And then what I did thereafter is I executed a resolution, giving it to the manager. And so many municipalities said to me, Mayor Cubillos, we got to do that in our town because there were so many towns that had to call for a special meeting. And then guess what? They couldn't call for a special meeting because guess why? The council went out of town because there was a hurricane coming. So they were so delayed in the process. So they're revisiting how they're going to operate and how they're going to do their disaster planning because generally there's 2 people that will stay behind, and maybe me, the mayor, the vice mayor. That's something that they come to an agreement with. But people leave. Why? You have children, you have dogs, you have families, you have parents, and you pick up and go because you got to take care of home first, and that's respectable. So at that time, I respected very much that the council did not give the manager, the chief, or myself what I would call a hard time. They were respecting that we were moving, and they came in and helped wherever there was needed. Mathis got a hold of Edmondson, he brought in ice over. Council person Roman, in the end, she went and she walked door to door to like 20 homes on the west side because their power was sort of like, spotted. So there was so much that that still needed to be done in the November, sort of the time frame. But I think what's really important is we couldn't have done it if we were being like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? It would have been really hard. For those residents that think maybe it took too long, it would have taken a lot longer. If those residents thinking that we didn't do it, well enough, it would have taken a lot longer. So there's a lot to be said that was in place for the village, which is clever. But it's still, no matter what, there are other things that we can do to better the process. There is other things that we can do to be better prepared. And there's other things that we can do and we are doing to take a look at data. The manager has already reached out to, I believe, 3 other municipalities. There's not many that are similar to us in size and in budget, but you have West Miami, you have Biscayne Park, and you have, I don't know what, there's one more that you might have reached. There's 3 there. And then there's other big cities that we reached out to because we want to see what they did. What a lot of municipalities did, and I know North Bay Village did it at Biscayne Park, was they waited for the county to pick up. Because if we didn't have a staging site, it would have stayed in the swales and the county would have come up and picked it up. But what was going to happen? It was going to take way longer, and then what's going to happen with all the debris on your swale? Rodents, and then there's a hazard because if it's too high, you're coming home, you don't know if anybody's there, and then it kills your grass. So, again, in hindsight, there are options that we will be able to put together, bring to the council, to a committee, and bring to the residents, and at that point, a decision can be made as to, if we do this way, it's going to cost the same that we did now. If we do it this way, it may cost this, and if we do it that way, it's going to cost that. So at least be given those options as a community and really work together so that we are better prepared. And I really do believe that has to be where our energy is at, because there's really, as it relates to Hurricane Irma, there's absolutely nothing more important than that. I covered a lot of this. So I want to talk about this sheet really quick. So I had the opportunity to really become more involved and learn the whole process of FEMA. And the first thing that needed to be done was an estimate, and what's called a project worksheet. And that project worksheet has to be submitted to FEMA in Washington, D.C. And they have to review it, and then they have to say, okay, based on their review, we're going to obligate you X amount of dollars based on your estimate, and then all the works get started from there. So that's sort of the process. Now, if FEMA can get it together, what they would do is they would have a data analysis as well, and they would say, okay, Village of El Portal has experienced 3 to 4 hurricanes, and on an average, if it's a storm 3, they're going to spend anywhere from 2 to 3 million. So with that, maybe we'll give them an advance of 1 million, and then the requirements to be able to submit all the receipts would be in. Now that would make more sense, so that the burden and the onus is not completely on the cities. And again, I'm going to cover that conversation a little bit. But right now, FEMA doesn't do that. FEMA says no. You turn in your project worksheet because we still need to see it. And hey, guess what? Until you don't turn in your project worksheet, we won't even consider allocating any monies in. So our project worksheet has been completely turned in, all paid. That was done July 26th. Now, one of the, and this is sort of like obstacles and stuff. One of the things that I want to cover is the lessons learned. And all these sheets, as I've said, I've been covering already, and they're going to be put up. And this is some of the stuff that we went through in conversations with residents and all that stuff. But, I really want to focus on what's so important right now. Because I sit back and I often, with the manager by myself, think of Irma. And I think of like the whole process and what life was like then and what we did and what at that time was just, it could have been worse. That's what I always think. It could have been so much worse. So, but all in all, I look back and I'm thinking, it was an experience, and we all are going to learn from experiences. And it was an experience that, again, I go back and I reiterate that hands down, I commend the people I was working with, because it was a lot of work. There was never an argument. There was never a disagreement. It was when you come in the mornings, we're like, what do we got to do today? And then we just all got it done. And then when we hired the consulting company, things were facilitated a little bit easier. And it was always about, dealing with FP&L and dealing with, the logistics company, and then dealing with the debris management company, and then dealing with the waste side. I mean, we can go on and on and on. But when we take a look at, or when I take a look at all that has been done, and when you take a look at all that's been submitted, it's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive that a village of our size, a village with limited resources, was able really to achieve this. And and I'm going to tell you why I know that we did really well in terms of our submittal process. So it's pretty impressive, and I'm pretty proud, and I really, 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 really hope if there's anything that you all walk away with is knowing that you can definitely sleep at night, because we dotted every I, we crossed every T, and we ensured that there was nothing that we did not look at, nothing we did not sign, nothing that if we had to get done, it got done, because it all got done in the manner that it needed to get done to ensure the liability for the village would be minimal so that we can get reimbursed back. And why am I really focusing in this now was because, as you all know, the village had to take out a loan of a little over $1 million, a bridge loan. And it came out of the paper. Now, I don't know the initial intent as to why it came out of the paper, but I can tell you it's been one of the greatest things that's happened to the village of El Portal. As a result of the article, when I got a call from the reporter, she wanted to ask me a lot of questions. And at the time, it was the end of the month, and I said, just email me the questions, and she did. And when I looked at the questions, it was unfair to the village. It seemed that all the questions were not really honing in on what I felt was needed to hone in to what needed to get covered. And the only thing I said to her in that email, public record, you can ask the clerk for it, I said, I don't know the intent of your article, but what I do hope is that it sheds light on the federal government, on the state, and on FEMA, because the onus is on them to pay us back. It should not be a town of our size is going through this, because as I told Governor Scott, and as I told the FEMA planning board that I met with a week and a half ago, was that your organization has been in existence so long, maybe longer than El Portal, or maybe just as much, or maybe a little less. But there has to be something in place for towns of our size. Why is there nothing in place? Let's say you have a threshold of 6,000 residents. So maybe it's the municipalities with 6,000 residents that you have a plan for. Because clearly if you have 6,000 residents in your town, your tax base is really not that big. And your reserves are really not that big. So how are we gonna pay for this? And the interesting dynamic is the state of Florida wants to put in a preemption where it says to us that municipalities in state of Florida cannot have in their reserves more than 3 months of their operating expenses. Can you imagine if we only had 3 months of operating expenses in our reserves? The bridge loan would not have been for $1 million. So I say this to say that, I didn't answer her questions, but I believe she somewhat quoted me on the paper. And after the article came out, I guess everybody does read the Herald still, so I received an email from Senator Rubio's office. I received an email from Senator Nelson's office, and I received an email from Governor Scott's office. And in the emails, it was like, what can we do? Like, what's going on? Like, what happened? Like, And the article came out on August 2nd, whatever that Friday was, I think it was the 4th, I had my first conference call with Senator Rubio's office. And since my conference call, they are tracking our project. They're telling me exactly where the project is so that we can get reimbursed. And what they've said based on the minimal that they've seen is that the quality of work is pretty good. And to me, that was probably the most important thing to hear. So Senator Rubio and Senator Nelson, who they work pretty well together, their offices, this is their office in DC. This is not their Miami office that I spoke to. This is their office in DC. They have sent to me a full email, and they're just tracking to see where exactly at, so that when it gets out to DC and goes to Tallahassee, we can hopefully not have to go through an audit or go through the whole thing again. We can actually get obligated the monies. So the great thing was that as that was happening, I had the opportunity to go to Governor Scott's office, which is what I did Friday. I don't have the date on top of my head, but I think that was not this Friday, but it was Friday before. And there are people that were saying, other mayors, oh, it's a waste of time, it's not session, the governor's up for re-election, actually not re-election, he's not even gonna run, he's turned out, you're wasting your time. And I said, actually no, because see what happens is nobody's stressed right now. Right now, it's because there's not so much going on besides an election, and it is an election, they really wanna listen to you. So you can really have actually a better conversation than you can have during legislative session. Not only did we have a meeting with him, we had a meeting with what used to be his financial analyst, Julie Epstein, but now she's his chief of staff. So a lot of mayors are like, oh, but it's a waste of time because when he leaves, he's gonna take his staff. And I said, yeah, they're gonna go somewhere in DC or Florida because they're not just gonna leave their post and go back home to Key West or wherever, or Michigan. So what came out of the meeting was exactly that. I said, that first and foremost, the great thing is this. If this article wouldn't have come out, no one would know about El Portal. And when the monies would arrive in Tallahassee, as the smallest municipality at 411 in the state of Florida, Lord knows when we'd get our money back. But they know, and by they, I mean Senator Rubio's office, Senator Nelson's office, and Governor Scott's office knows that as of that article, we have 363 days to pay that loan back. And they don't want to be looked upon as the reason why this small village is crushed because of the federal organization that has existed for so many years. So they've been really committed. So I am quite really thankful for the article. But guess what? Just as we all have to go on with our lives, and you know what happens? Say, for example, they break into your car, and for like a week or two, we all lock our doors, and we take our laptop out, and we put everything away, right? And then 30 days later, we forget about it, and oh, I left my laptop inside. What's gonna have to happen, like the Tokursia, is we have to stay on top of this. Because if we let it go, then it would serve no purpose that we had this experience. So we have to be the ones reaching out every so often. Where are we at? Where are we at? Where are we at? Because guess what? If I called Julie Epstein in Governor Scott's office, she knows exactly who El Portal is and exactly where they're located in Miami-Dade County. And that's really great. And that's a true testament to what we've done. And it's a true testament that I applauded the actual, I sent her thank you for being able to actually put that, because it really made FEMA and the federal government, the state of Florida, look at it and be like, okay, well, what are we can't be doing something wrong. That's, that's not good. So, and the other thing I said in that conversation, I said, this is not going to be the only disaster we go through. So what happens, what happens to our town if we have a disaster in another week? That's what I asked. I said, what does the federal government or what does the state of Florida have in place for a town like mine? Because I know I'm not the only town. I know that the village of El Portal is not the only town that is going through this. There has to be at least another 20 or 30 or 40, if not more, that are under 6,000 as far as a threshold, that probably our budget is a little bigger than ours, and definitely don't have the reserves that we had at the time. And what are we gonna do? This is why the state of Florida exists, and this is why FEMA exists. And I said, what are you all doing? Because I told them, I can tell you what we did, I can tell you what we're doing, and I can tell you what we're gonna do next time. But it can't be that the onus is completely on a municipality. Like, what is FEMA doing? Like, is there a plan? What is the state of Florida doing? Is there a plan? I understand that at one point it existed where, there was advanced pay and no longer, I get it, it was too loosey-goosey, and now you have to put more policies and more stringence in place, but there has to be something in place. Because the city of Miami, the city of Miami Gardens, and the city of Doral, they can withstand another storm. We can't. If we have a storm this year, it would not be good. It would not be good at all. So it's really, really, really important that the lines of communication with the governor's office, whoever the next governor is completely open, and that we have to be on that. And that is where our attention needs to be. And that is where our focus needs to be. It can't be that we are like, oh, I feel guilty, maybe I could have done better and not spent $2.2 million in the village. No, what we need to do is, what are we doing next? How are we working together to help each other so that we have a better plan next time, and that we have a better program next time? And even if I'm not the mayor and you're not the manager, she's not the chief, there is going to be another mayor, there's going to be another manager, there's going to be another chief. We got to leave something behind better for them. We got to leave something better behind for them, because this will not be the only disaster that the village of El Portal experiences. So I say that to say that that is sort of where our focus is at, and that's sort of what we're working on right now, because that needs to be definitely one of the priorities that we have to work on. I want to touch briefly on transparency and communication. Actually, it's the same slide I put up last year, and I put it up again because the entire council, when we're up here, I think each of us are continually told that, you know, either we're not transparent enough, or we're not transparent thoroughly, or we don't communicate in an effective way. So I kind of want to reiterate all the areas where we, quote unquote, try to be transparent and try to communicate to our residents. And the one that I want everybody to focus in on is our website. We try really hard to keep it updated, to provide more information, and to ensure that everything that's on there is up to date for all of you as it relates to ordinances that were passed, resolutions that were passed, or events that are coming up, or anything as it relates to that. And even more so now, we have the recent charrette. We also have the code is on there. We have the brand new land use map that got passed last year is on there. So we really try to make it as a resource for all of you to direct your attention to go there for any question that you may have as it relates to the village. And then of course the other avenues that we have is we publicly noted on the 3 marquees. Some of us, if not all of us, have a Facebook page or Instagram. The Peacock gets delivered 4 times a year to the residents. The 2 interest group that we have is a task force in the Women's Club. Next year I'm really working on a youth task force with the Horace Man. I think that's really important. We do have our monthly council meetings, and we do have our committee meetings that are every other month. And the annual State of the Village. In 2014, when I got elected first as mayor, I remember sitting down with the manager at the time, and I'm just like, you know, tell me about this annual State of the Village, because when we were on, and I don't know if Council Mathis can agree with me, but when we were on before, it didn't seem like it was consistent. It seemed like it would happen in January, or would happen in summer, or would happen in, gosh, I remember Saturday, Lee and I, we were here with Daisy Black one time, and I think there was like 3 of us. I specifically remember Saturday morning. But I remember telling Jason, I was like, you know what? No, we have to make this consistent. We have to make it where that if you can't go to any event, if you can't go to any meeting, if you can't come to anything, come to this. Because you're might hear me talk for an hour or a little more, but you're gonna have all of a recap of what we have done, what we need to do, and what we're working on, and then it'll be put on the website. And then we're gonna consistently do it the same day every year, which we thought about the 4th Tuesday in August, because it's our free month. And since you all know that we generally meet on the 4th Tuesday, it would sort of be something that autopilot you guys would come to. Clearly it's the 3rd Tuesday because there's elections next week, I know that, but this is the 3rd Tuesday, not the 4th. So the annual State of the Village, I hope continues to be the one that you all, if you don't make it to anything, come to that, because you would get a really good synopsis of what your administration and the council is doing. And then I want you to take a look at the networking community events, because you know, the community events is another resource for all of you. While they cost money from the budget, it's a resource for all of you to come to develop the community spirit that we have. But more importantly, if you come to these community events, you know what's going on. I mean, you'll know what's pending, what's not pending, what do we have, what have we passed. You get to talk to the police officers, the administration, as well as any of us. But you're going to see some change about that next year. Officer Battaglia reinvigorated our Citizens Crime Watch, which I think is a fantastic tool. I know I had a mass text 2 blocks, and I was able to had all the phone numbers. So, you know, Citizens Crime Watch is a valuable tool that if you're not a part of it, you should really find out more about it. And then when I put up this slide last year to this year, the one thing I added was, I was like, okay, so if they feel we need to communicate more, I'll add a town hall every month. And so I want to go a little bit into the town halls. So we added a town hall once a month. And the topics at the town hall were all the topics that we heard, whether the council would say it at a meeting, oh, a resident talked about this, or you know, I heard about this, or I know that this is something that they wanted to know more of. Every single topic of the town hall was about a topic that I knew the public had some type of interest. So the first town hall we had was in January, and we had the proprietors for the sanctuary. The town hall had 65 to 75 residents, very well attended. Here we had the opportunity to firsthand see the designs for the sanctuary, have a conversation with the owners, even have a conversation with one of the future tenants, which is going to be a restaurant. And really be able to have a dialogue and make some impact, which by the way, most of this passed at the July council meeting. And some of the recommendations that you all made were taken into consideration. So town halls are really important. Second meeting, we did not get that many residents. But it was about planning and zoning. A little boring, but guess what? You all need to know how the land use changed. You all need to know how what we're doing about our code and why we're doing certain things and what the impact it's going to have, whether it's on your home value, whether it's going to be on sustainability for the village. We had Juan from Plus Servia, who was our planner, come in and provide instruction. It was absolutely phenomenal, but we only had about maybe 20 residents. And that was and actually at this meeting, we discussed in great length the fee schedule that was discussed actually at the January meeting that had passed. And we were actually going to have a second reading, but the council said, no, let's have a town hall on it, and then we'll consider it in March, giving the residents even more opportunity to hear what's going on instead of just having a first reading in January and a first reading in February. We actually had the first reading in January, town hall in February, and then the second reading was in March, because the fee schedule is going to impact all of you if you want to put a pool in or a driveway or any of those, sort of like the bigger projects. And actually Courtney was at that meeting and pointed out something that some of us had missed, which was something that needed to be corrected, and it was able to get corrected, and it passed at the second reading. So I say that to say that the input that you guys have are equally as important to the input that we put in when we're going through our meetings as well. March was Parkland, and February was Parkland, and March is when a lot of the marches were happening. I got a little resistance from residents because they actually wanted us to cancel this town hall, and it was one that had been planned, and there were residents that had already confirmed, and we didn't cancel it. And actually from this town hall, I think some of you have received the green pamphlet that says like a green doorknob. This is how can we keep Albertal clean. That pamphlet came as a result of this town hall. Because residents wanting to have a better idea of, how do you put the trash can out, or, what do you do, and how can we, what time does it be out? So that flyer came out of this town hall that I did with, I co-hosted with Councilperson Vimani Roman, and we had a representative from World Waste Recycle, and Waste Management, and they covered sort of questions and concerns and the do's and don'ts. And let me tell you, there's so many do's and don'ts that this workshop truly needs to happen again, because there's so many do's and don'ts to recycle and the way it operates and what they actually accept. Okay. Oh, I'm missing April. Huh, I just realized that. Isn't that interesting? March, May. I'm missing April in there, which is okay because we just covered it. April was emergency preparedness. In May, it was Mother's Month. It was Mother's Day, so we had a Mother's Day brunch. But we also invited community leaders that were women who not only represent their town elected, but also running for office. So we had Kristen right here. She's running for Congress right now. She's a commissioner of Miami Beach, vice mayor of North Bay Village. She actually co-hosted with me. She's the vice mayor and a principal at a school. She's over Miami Gardens, that's me. And she's running for a state rep in Doral. She's currently the vice mayor, and that's Councilperson Roman, and that's our vice mayor. And that's her kid, not Vimani's kid. Okay. So it was really nice. There was questions about, what it's like to be a woman in office, and what are the experiences you have, and what are the impact, and how's family life, and how you balance all that. So it was sort of a really nice, and the food was phenomenal. It was one of our little nice. Now June we had, it might be a first, I don't know, Councilperson Babs may correct me on that one, I don't know, but I think it's the first in my time here. We had a budget town hall where at every table was a committee. So you all had the opportunity to dissect the budget by yourself with the committee chair and give your input on how we spent money, how we can better spend the money, and give us your input. 5 people showed up. Thank you, Mary Palmer. She was here. And, yes. Patty Bauer was here too. What a powerful town hall that was, because we really had opportunity to sit there and just dialogue and really get input. And from that, and from this town hall, we had 2 budget workshops with the council, and some, if not a lot of the input that was given to us, we actually put it in the budget, and you all are going to see just sort of at a glance with the budget. So that was the June town hall. We did not have a town hall. Oh, look at that, the budget's right there. Okay. The one area I want you to focus is the number right here. You see that green number? That green number says $131,822. I don't know if the council has seen this just yet, I just got this. But we had a second budget workshop where, well, let me go back. At the first budget workshop, I started off the workshop, I'm not sure how many of them agree with me, but I know they all understood. I said, this is not the same year. We cannot take a look at the incoming budget the same way we have in the past. We have to take a look at it with a different pair of eyes. And those eyes are the Irma eyes, because we just experienced Irma. And we have to figure out what are we going to do to be as lean, as frugal, and as conservative as possible as we move into the new year without hurting feelings as it relates to raises. So no one across the board got a raise. We looked at the repairs and upgrades. All of that was cut back to an absolute minimum. The only repair that we're going to do is the $10,000 for potentially the roof. And that's a must safety for our staff here and our police officers. But the council stipend went from $4,500 a year back to $3,000. So all across the board, we cut back, because the goal that we had, or the goal I asked them to consider, was that, you know, the budget needs to be balanced. It can't be that we're taking out of the reserves, clearly. The goal should be not only that it's balanced, but money is put back into the reserves. So after all of the input that we received from you all, and the council went over at a budget workshop, the first one and the second one, the preliminary rough draft that Irwin will be sending to all of us, to the council, we're putting back in the reserves $131,822. So I think that that's great. It's a small step. But just so you know, this is just at a glance. There's a sheet for every department. So it says Village Council, Admin, and Finance. There's a sheet that'll have line items to each of these. And if you look at every department, we either cut back tremendously or we're as lean as possible. And the budget is based on the revenue, and the revenue is based on property taxes, utilities, and franchise fees. And again, this will be sent by the clerk to you not that long, in next couple of days. Okay. All right, so no more Irma, no more budget, so it'll go a little quicker now. Really important is, aside from Irma, the manager does do other things, and we are focusing on other things, and one of the big one is the Northeast Corridor Smart Plan. For all of you that know, the SMART plan is happening through all of Miami-Dade County. There's a Southwest Corridor, there's the Northwest Corridor, we are the Northeast Corridor. And when the manager and I went to the initial charrette in February, it was important for us to go because it's really important that the Northeast Corridor know that we are players in this game. You know, we are really small, but we abut Miami, we sit in Miami, we abut Miami Shores, so we gave input as to what we thought the residents, based on our charrette, would like to see at the Northeast Corridor as the planning moves forward. After that charrette, the manager and I attended a roundtable with the TPO and the Northeast Corridor mayors, and what the discussion was about. You know, where are the platforms going to be? Where is the consideration? You know, where are the, walkability of the bus routes going to be? But at that meeting, we spoke briefly because we also informed them that, we have within El Portal 15 acres of vacant land that is owned by a proprietor. And we actually invited the attorney to the property to come to us to that meeting so that she can speak briefly about the terrain and the potential and so on and so forth. From that meeting, the mayor of Miami Shores was there and spoke up and said, we have nowhere by Biscayne Boulevard where we can put a platform, but I'm pretty familiar with what Mayor Cubillos and the manager saying, and we would support them in any way. And I think as a result of that, we just received a resolution from the clerk that the Miami Shores Council, in the event that would happen, they would support anything that would happen there. And from that meeting, the manager and I were approached by a few of the members from the TPO there, and that resulted from a recent meeting with Mayor Francis Juarez. And at that meeting, we also went with Juan from Placerbia. And at that meeting, it wasn't about, okay, hey, we want a platform and we have the 15 acres and we have a developer that may want it. What was most important about that meeting was say, hey, we're El Portal and we exist. And we want to be sure that we may not get a platform, but we want to be considered for walkability, for trolleys, for a bike path, you know. So that is one thing that we walked away with. And he was like, and I said, but hey, you know, there are certain routes that are already designated for the SMART plan. And the SMART plan was an initiative that the TPO has had for the last couple of years. And what they're going to do is a transit that's going to go through all of Miami-Dade County. And it's a transit to alleviate the current traffic. And it's a transit to hopefully have a mini, like sort of like a metro mover, for lack of a better word. And they're looking for platforms. Right now, the platforms that exist right now that are guaranteed, I believe, is Aventura, and then I think North Miami, and then they want Midtown, and then the other one is by 79th Street or that area, and that's where they're not sure if it's going to be there or they would consider this or what have you. So when we look at the SMART plan route, that's what I'm talking about as far as when I say platform and I say a transportation. But the other thing is, what's the point of having a platform here or having a platform over there, but they're not considering us for any trolley, they're not considering us for any walkability, bike racks, or what have you. So when we had the meeting, it was not just about, hey, you know, the town wants a platform on the 15 acres and, you know, the developer is okay with it. No, it's about, hey, if we don't get that, what are we going to get? You know, we're going to be within the vicinity. It's going to have a direct impact. We have a school. We're right off of Biscayne Boulevard, and we have a potential development of multi-use that's going to happen. So from that conversation, it was we definitely left there knowing that, you know, that we're not going to just be like, you know, the SMART plan is going to happen, and then you all are going to be like, well, why don't we have a trolley, or why don't we have this? So it's really important that we're part of the dialogue from the beginning, and that was one thing. And then at the end of the conversation is when we talked about the Little River. Which we go into next. The Little River has been one of those things that has been ongoing as a problem that we really need to address, and somehow and unfortunately may get put in the back burner. But at the recent uproar, and as I said this morning, I give so much kudos to Kristen, who's here, and Ada and Adam, who's in the back, because even when the river is clean and everything is fine, they're still vocal and they're so supportive. They don't just show up when things are really bad. They're consistent with that. So they put together a call to action in the community. It was very well attended. One of the things that came out of it, and I proposed to Kristen, was that Central Florida has started a Little River Compact Initiative. And the River Compact Initiative is when there's a collaboration with agencies, municipalities, and different organizations that come together to do an agreement. And I said, hey, Kristen, you know, I have a mayor who that was his initiative when he was a president of the Florida League of Cities. And while he can't now make it to your community call to action, he can come to El Portal, I think the Wednesday before, and she was like, she rearranged her whole schedule, and he came into town and we showed him the Little River. And that is where it's, you know, when you take a look at organizations like the Florida League of Cities and the Miami-Dade League of Cities, I mean, these are relationships that we built and we create because they're there to help. And when I was with them last week, he's like, what have you done? What are we doing? Like, what happens next? And I said, well, Kristen's been traveling and we're going to reconnect now that it's fall, and we're going to, you know, what would be the next step? But we are hoping that the Little River Compact would be something that could help, because it's helped tremendously Central Florida, and it's really becoming a hot topic for state of Florida because of all the algae that's happening in up Florida. And there's another resolution, an environmental one that just passed in the Florida League of Cities that's going to trickle down all the way to all of the municipalities to hopefully adopt locally. So all of that goes to support to the federal government, to the state of Florida, on what we can do better to take care of our canals. One of the things that IBIS posted on Nextdoor recently is that, you know, I think a lot of people are unaware that the Little River, correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of also a drainage where things get drained into, and that's why you see sort of like a little bit of gas, or you see that pollution. But even so, one of the things that pumped me up was Wagner Creek River just had a tremendous renovation that happened with the monies with fined. So we're in that conversation, we're in that dialogue, and Kristen spearheading this project with Ada, with Adam, and with Hugh. We want to keep the momentum going because, as we said earlier, you know, residents are really involved because it's really hot, and we need to keep them engaged because this is something that takes a lot of legwork and it cannot be done alone. So you may be hearing from Kristen, you may be hearing from Adam, you may be hearing from Hugh to get involved with this compact initiative, because it's really something that we need to embrace, because I do believe that it is going to be well received. And if I can get other municipalities like the city of Miami and the city of Doral, that the river impacts all the way up there, on board, it's only going to be that much more better for all of us to be able to put this compact together. I want to give a brief update on the future development. We talked briefly about the sanctuary. At the July council meeting, the special exception for the sanctuary has passed. What does that mean? It means that they can move forward with their project, and they probably will be soon in terms of pulling out the permits. I think the only component that they're waiting for is the alcohol ordinance. Every ordinance that we pass must go through 2 separate readings. The alcohol ordinance passed the first reading at the July council meeting, and the second reading will either be at the September, October, or November council meeting. Let's see, and their plans are on the sanctuary special exception plans are on the village website. There were some updates based on traffic control and quality of life. A lot of those that live in the area and walls. I don't think those plans are up just yet, but the initial plans were, so we'll see if the updated plans are the ones that the council passed at the July meeting. Little Farm. So, might have been Irma, because I blame everything on Irma. But as it relates to the Little Farm, I'm always, out of respect, I contact the attorney. I email Iris and I'm like, is there an update? Is there an update? And, Iris came with us to that Northeast Corridor meeting. And then I was like, you know what? I found the business cards, so I contacted and emailed directly the 2 owners and the project manager. And my email went as follows. My email was like, hi, how are you, whatever. But I said, like, what's going on? You came in here in such a mad rush. You displaced all these residents. You gave them whatever dollar amount was legally necessary. And then you asked us to pass the Brownsfield resolution, and then we haven't heard from you in 3 years. Like, how is that even like fair or right or anything? And I said, the council wants answers. Like, we want to see something. And I said, I'd like to see it by October 20th. I think I said October 10th. Excuse me, August 10th. They got back to us. They sent me an email back, and they were very apologetic. Well, that's great. And he says, we're going to come down and see you. Well, they actually did. We actually met with the project manager. I asked Norman to come in the meeting. I asked the manager to come in the meeting. Actually asked Adam Old to come to the meeting. I can't ask a council member, by the way, because it's a violation of sunshine, so it was just us. And it was a preliminary meeting. It was unofficial to some extent, because everything they showed us clearly will not entirely pass, but at least the vision was shown. The vision was shown as a multi-use. The vision was shown that they are actually trying to do something. But I think the walkaway that I had from that meeting was that they don't want to sell. They actually want to do something. Sure, they're working with investors and they're working to, monies and what have you. But, they are looking for a lot of density. I will put that there. But clearly, this is not something that's going to happen before the council at 2 meetings. There's going to be public hearing. There's going to be town hall. There's going to be a lot of that. So I encourage you all to be mindful and be, when the clerk sends you an email on something like this, that, hey, if you can't go, send the husband, send the wife, send a neighbor, but be informed. I don't think it's a development that's going to happen within the next year or 2, but at least we have to get the momentum going, and we asked them for a quarterly report so that we can know what's going on with them. The annexed area is an area right behind Don Bailey's. And in that annexed area, they're looking to do 2-story buildings of condos and apartments. They are working on 2 projects, and they were supposed to show us something by the summer. They're not going to, but hopefully they'll show us something by the end of the year. And they definitely want to get a head start before the Little Farm. So we're hoping that the project that they sent to me that they're working on right now that they just finished is actually pretty nice in terms of the condos. So I think they want to do something similar to that on the annexed area. And again, the annexed area is right behind Don Bailey's. Okay, so I have this picture up because it's the most recent event that we had. One of the walkaways from the budget that you all are going to see, and one of the sacrifices that we made, is that in 2019 you're going to see a lot less events. That was the one area where we cut back As I said, we were trying to be as frugal and as conservative as possible as it relates to all of the events, and that was the one area that we had to say, okay, let's focus on the key events. The 4th of July, 5K and Easter egg hunt are the ones that we're going to put our energy in, and we're going to focus in for 2019. Let's wait, let's get our reimbursement back, and let's see where we're at in the next 6 months to 7 months. But I put the backpack giveaway because I want to commend everybody involved. We had a fantastic turnout with the town. Our police officers were all present. Most, if not, I think Councilperson Roman was there, and Councilperson Mathis was there. The Women's Club, that's them over there. Here's a little picture here. Don't thank them. They sponsored all the ice cream. We ran out of food, we ran out of ice cream, but it was really, really a fun event, and that sort of wrapped up the sort of the season of events right now. So just, you know, when you take a look at them, be like, oh, they don't want to do anything. It's not that. So for the next year, we'll cut back a little bit, and we'll see where we're at in the middle of 2019. I put that picture up not because I want you all to think that we go party often, because actually we really don't together. But you know, Councilperson Mathis and I have probably been the longest on the dais, and he will tell you, and I think he will agree, even Vice Mayor Nickerson, you know, when we go to these League of Cities board meetings monthly, you know, I think get a little boring, but you know, we go there because we build a camaraderie. We go there because we build a rapport. We go there because when I first started, Councilperson Mathis went to him and I went to every single one, and that helps with the recognition of the town of who we are. And for a long time, it was just him and I, and then it was him and I and Vice Mayor Nickerson. And you know, the reason I liked that photo when it was sent to me was because that's El Portal. And it was well, we're missing one council person, but in my whole time, I've never had the chief go, I've never had the clerk go, I've never had the manager go. Spouses were there. That's Raul from Cap Government right there, and that's Lieutenant Carroll, who lives in El Portal, and that's his wife. So you know, to me, you know, Captain Carroll, to me, you know, when we go to these board meetings, yeah, it may be fun and whatever, but you know, they get tired. You know, we have to leave home, we're away from our family, we get home at 9, 10 o'clock at night, might even be working 6, 7 hours a whole day, but we still go because we go for that sense of purpose and that sense of unity and that sense of relationship building. So, and sometimes when you go by yourself for so many years, it gets a little lonely and boring, even though you talk to a lot of people. So when I got that picture, it felt good. So I put that up there. Because not only do we all look fantastic, but the Florida League of Cities, that we do. I thought that picture was I thought that picture was touched up or something. The Miami-Dade League of Cities and the Florida League of Cities have been an invaluable tool to us. But you know, it's like with any organization, it's only as good as what you make out of it. And you know, I encourage elected officials. I encourage if you're elected, it's not just showing up to a meeting. You actually have to participate in community outreach. You have to go to these events. You have to be a part, because that's how you network. That's how they get to know who you are. You know, when we called Francis Suarez's office, you can ask the manager, he responded in 2 minutes to the email. And it's because I know him personally, and I only know him because of this. Because when he was the president of the league, I was on the executive board, and we built a camaraderie all together. And there's sort of a brotherhood where they'll take care of you wherever you go because you've been together. And those things, that's why I know he's going to help us with the Little River, and now the mayor of Doral is on the executive board. So these things just help, but it takes time when you're elected. It's not just coming to the meetings, it's not just being here, but it's what can we do out there and bring back here to help our village. And that's one of the key components that I know many residents don't see, but I can tell you that I do, and some members of your council do as well, and it's really a sort of an important part of who we are, what we do for you. So it's not that, you know, we party a lot, because I don't think we've all been on together like that, okay, so priorities for 2019. We're gonna wrap up by just going briefly. This is some of the things in my head, and we'll talk about it at the council. But priorities for 19, reimbursement from FEMA, so we can pay back our bridge loan. Phase 1 of septic to sewer, that's going through some things right now that it'll be discussed at the next council meeting. An MOU with Horseman might be needed. An MOU is a memorandum of understanding. Horseman Middle School has a new principal, and unfortunately, he started when Irma hit. So we were all too busy with Irma that we didn't establish a rapport with him. So there's a sense of, you don't really like us, and so on and so forth. So it's really unfortunate, because It took us a while to have a really good relationship with Principal Maycock, and we did. It was really solid. It was really good. I could text him at any hour, and he was like there. He was, and all of a sudden, we're like starting, it's like a brand new relationship. So we're trying to nurture it, we're trying to put water in it, and we're trying to feed it so that it can grow. And I ask all the residents, some of you are nodding, that literally live abut to it like me, to be patient because we are working on it. It is an ongoing process. And he came into the last council meeting. I had a meeting with him at my office probably like maybe 4 weeks ago. We went through like, can we do a facilities agreement where maybe the residents can use the tennis courts and the basketball courts in the weekend. I've been approached by residents, can we use the field for soccer? We want to expand the nature trail. But now all of these yeses that we had in place with the former administration, now they're like, okay, we're gonna see. And with that is tied in our subject to sewer because of the lift station. So an MOU with Horace Mann is something that I believe the manager and the attorney are beginning to work on. As we talked, and the nature trail is all tied together. The sanctuary, you should start seeing it come to life a little bit. A Little River Compact Initiative, I implore you that if Kristen, Adam, or Hugh, or even Claudia reach out to you, really get involved, stay engaged, because we can only make the difference if you guys are a part of it. I put code compliance village-wide consistency because we really got to do something about that. It's sort of that thing that no one wants to talk about, nobody wants to do, and everybody wants, except when it comes to their house. But we've got to do something. Something. I don't have all the answers, but it's something I'm really going to talk to the council, like what can we do what do we have to go through the code? Do we have to rewrite certain things? That's really important. The last one, I forgot to change the word. It's execution of leadership continuity plan, but it's a succession plan. At the last State of the Village last year, I mentioned, and I'll mention it again, that the last time that I'm running is right now for 2018. And I'll repeat it again. My last term as mayor will be 18 to 20. And it's not because I'm termed out. I'm not termed out. I just believe that there's time to move on and time to pass the baton. And I said it last year, and I say it again this year, that having a succession plan, especially with where we're at in our village, especially because we have so much going on, there needs to be a plan. If I wouldn't even think of having a plan, it would not be the best thing for the village, because whoever comes on board next needs to understand all of the things that are going on, and more importantly, prepare themselves for the time to be able to do it all. And that's where so I put that on there as sort of consistency. It's what I mentioned last year. For those of you who were here last year, it's how I close today. I will let you know I'm not going to not run in 2020 and leave you all hanging. I think that we've done too much together. I also think that I know that I hope and I know that the village will be even better, and whoever's going to be next has to do it better than I ever did it, so that when I come back, because I still never live here, and I still do own a business here, I'm not going anywhere, but it's time to really pass the baton, and it's time to let others grow and learn, and sort of carry on the torch, so that's going to be a really important part for my next term. And with that said, I'm going to close on this, our website. Always go to the website. If you don't know what we're doing, if you have any questions, go to the website, because it should be the resource. Bookmark it in your browsers. It's right there. I was going to walk you all through it, but I really think you guys prefer empanadas and not the cocktail, and the juice here. But listen, I know it was really long this evening, but it was necessary. Because there's just too much going on, there's too much liability in place, and there's too much that we're responsible for you all, and it's important that you all know that we're not just working with Irma, we're not just working with the SMART plan, we're not working with just the lift station, we're not just working with the nature trail, we're juggling all of these balls all at the same time, and we're all doing it together. And the manager does it every single day for us, without staff. So I say that if we don't do things immediately, we're trying really hard to do it as quickly as we can. But bear with us. I do believe that 2019 and beyond, as we move forward, will get better. And I can say that one of the reasons why it is better is because there are a few of you who are really involved. There are a few of you who are generally really involved, and you're always there and you want to help, and that helps a lot, because it gets very lonely. And it gets very hard, and it gets very, a lot of those things. So, when you have a resident pull up and kind of help you out, and when you have a resident that sends you that one text, or you have the resident that continually comes to the meetings and is really positive and uplifting, I can guarantee you from my point, and I'm sure my members up there, it helps it fuels us to keep going. Because, sometimes we don't get those nice emails. But with that said, I want to thank you all. I could not do this without the support of so many of you, and with the support of the council, and with the support of the administration. Yanis is back there, and Christia is here, and with the support of the police department that attends every meeting that we have and every event. So give applause to yourself, because without you guys, none of this is possible. So you have a good night.